Hey everyone, I'm Megyn Kelly. Welcome to the Megyn Kelly Show. The corporate media is having a bigger meltdown this week than any other of the Trump presidency so far. There's Joy Reid's firing on MSNBC. Take care, sweetheart. We'll miss you in our own special way. There's the revolt over Washington Post owner Jeff Bezos putting his stamp on the outlet's opinion page. And there is the ongoing Doge saga as Elon Musk starred in President Trump's first cabinet meeting yesterday. They are horrified that someone who's not in the cabinet would show up at the cabinet meeting and actually try to run herd on this thing. Like this person thinks that they're in the cabinet and they're not actually in the cabinet. And how dare they do that? It's very upsetting and it's totally inappropriate unless your name is Jill Biden, in which case it's very laudable and good for her, or we didn't even notice it. Joining me now to discuss it all is Buck Sexton. He's co-host of the Clay Travis and Buck Sexton Show. Don't miss a moment. Subscribe to this show on YouTube and follow me on Insta, Facebook, and X. Here's one way to clean up your medicine cabinet this season and replace toxin-filled conventional products with more natural options. Propolis Immune Support Throat Spray and Propolis Plus Vitamin C Liposomal can be must-haves in the medicine cabinet as seasonal germs start to hit. Did you know germs can enter through your nasal passages just as easily as through your mouth? Propolis Nasal Spray is a great non-toxic swap for other over-the-counter drug-filled medications. This one's non-habit-forming, it's natural, and it has antimicrobial benefits. Beekeepers Naturals makes clean, non-toxic products that actually work. They never use harmful ingredients like red dye number 3 or other synthetic dyes or artificial flavors. Their products are third-party tested for all pesticides, and they're dedicated to sustainable beekeeping and helping to save the bees. Beekeepers Naturals is offering you an exclusive offer. Go to beekeepersnaturals.com/Megyn or enter the code Megyn to get 20% off your order. That's beekeepersnaturals.com/Megyn or just enter the code Megyn when you check out. Beekeepers Naturals products are also available at Target, Whole Foods, Walmart, CVS, and Walgreens. Buck, welcome back.
Hey, Megyn, thanks for having me.
So it's one thing to have Jill Biden show up, but it's totally different to have Elon Musk show up and try to be accountable to the press and the cabinet. That is a bridge too far. They are out of line in having Elon there, and you need look no further than today's headlines to figure that out. CNN. Trump's cabinet meeting serves as a backdrop to Musk's power. It's just a backdrop. Trump was like a supporting cast member. New York Times. Musk's cabinet cameo. The elephant in the room wore black. The Guardian. Trump cabinet flunkies hail wannabe Caesar and Elon, his oligarch pal. And let's just give you a little contrast. When Jill Biden attended a cabinet meeting in September, this just past September 2024, it was Biden's first in 11 months. Look at her sitting at the head of the table. The CNN headline was not cabinet meeting serves as backdrop to Jill Biden's power. It was Joe Biden directs cabinet to run through the tape in legacy burnishing meeting. And then 21 paragraphs in, they mention First Lady Jill Biden shared an update on a women's health research initiative. New York Times, did they mention Jill? No, not a word. The Guardian, who's so upset now about how the flunkies hailed the wannabe Caesar and Elon, his oligarch, nothing. Didn't say one word. But Elon, bridge too far.
Well, to be fair, I think that the former president's wife was about as much the president as he was. I mean, Jill Biden was probably making more decisions behind the scenes of any consequence than Joe Biden was, which now even the Democrats and the Democrat-aligned media more or less admit, at least they do for the last year of his term. But yes, obviously, Megyn, the criticism is increasingly desperate and pathetic, I think, from the media, specifically about Elon. I mean, here you have the richest man in the world, self-made, richest man in the world, and every CEO that I've talked to, and I know you talk to, the titans of industry, everyone respects this guy and then some. I mean, a lot of people will just say he's a genius, specifically at what he's trying to help our government do, which is address inefficiencies, bureaucracy, bloat, waste, break through the really hard problems. Why is Elon the richest man in the world? Why is Tesla, SpaceX, now X after Twitter, all these, the Boring Company, all these different things? Why has he been so incredible at it? It's because when everyone else says, this can't be done, this can't be fixed, somehow this guy fixes it. That we have him involved in trying to right our government and figure out where a lot of this money is going and where a lot of the bottlenecks are for transparency, and where the bureaucracy has just huddled together and decided they're completely unaccountable, should be a dream come true. And here's the big problem, Megyn. It should be a bipartisan dream come true. This isn't, in any meaningful way, a partisan issue, meaning if Medicare is paying billions of dollars to straight up fraudsters, not just here, but overseas as well, which everyone has known this has been going on for years. No one's done anything about it. If Elon Musk can stop that, does anyone want to be in favor of it? Democrats have put themselves in a place where they have to root for the bad thing just because they want to oppose Trump, Elon, and everybody involved with them. And I think this cabinet meeting is a perfect example. He's talking about ending or limiting, bringing down the numbers on government fraud, waste, and abuse. And they're attacking this guy as if he isn't incredibly talented, able, and capable of doing this, probably more so than, I don't know, anyone else on the planet.
But yeah,
so I
he
think
did it
that
at
they
Twitter.
just dig the
Everybody
hole
said
deeper.
Twitter was going to close. Now it's efficient. It's got 20% of the staff it used to, and it's a success. I want to continue it down this line, and we'll talk more about what happened at the cabinet meeting, but just as an offshoot to Doge and what Elon's doing, one of the agencies he's been looking at, obviously, is USAID, this agency that we use to funnel all sorts of foreign aid to God knows whom. That's really what we're finding out. These pet causes of the Democrats that have been getting slush funded for years. And there was a hearing on this yesterday on Capitol Hill, Buck. And listen to this exchange. You've got Representative Tim Burchett, Republican of Tennessee, questioning now former USAID executives on where the money was going. Listen to this.
Mr. Roman, are you aware that we are sending $40 million a week to the Taliban?
Yes, sir.
Can you name other instances of foreign aid going to terrorist organizations?
We have assisted al-Shabaab in Somalia. There's been instances of the Khamsi network in Sudan, Hamas, Islamic Jihad, Hezbollah, Kataib al-Hezbollah, Hayat Tahrir al-Shams in Syria. Dozens of terror organizations have received indirect assistance. Let's use Gaza as our case study. $2.1 billion in American taxpayers' money to Gaza since October 7th when Hamas invaded southern Israel. Waivers were granted because they said that there was an emergency use to have that money come in to Gaza, thereby jettisoning the usual typical screening procedures. As a result, 90% of aid that was going from the United States by way of its agents in Gaza ended up in Hamas-controlled areas.
Seems like the emergency might have been armed terrorists to kill civilians. Would that be accurate?
That's accurate, and even more than that, Samantha Powers, the administrator for USAID, was intent on having Israel not be able to defend itself. They bring together groups in Washington that overseas work with groups that kill Americans.
Yeah, I don't need a flow chart to show that. I appreciate it.
International NGOs and UN agencies actively lobby here in Washington, D.C. against vetting policies that would prevent it. I was the senior vetting officer at USAID. We had a regulation before we left in the last administration that anybody who touches money in countries where there's terrorists, those names have to go through databases, terrorist databases. That was overturned by Biden.
So that first guy's a think tank guy. That second guy was at USAID. It's unbelievable where this money's been going. We're funding Hamas.
Yes, well, everyone was, I think, rightly outraged, although sometimes it was almost amusing if the numbers weren't so high in terms of the wasted money for the, transgender puppet shows in Mongolia and, DEI theory in Guatemala and the things that everyone's paying for. That's one thing. It's another thing, and I think even more egregious, to look at what was just being discussed there, which is money being funneled to some of the most vicious and vile terrorist groups in the world under the guise of this somehow advancing U.S. interests. And that's what's key. USAID is not supposed to be a global charity. It is not a soup kitchen for the world. It is supposed to advance U.S. interests. And a lot of the stuff that Elon has exposed so far, Elon Doge, has exposed is frivolous and absurd. But some of those things, the expenditures, for example, going to Hamas and al-Shabaab in Somalia and some of these terrorist groups that I used to track when I was in the CIA years and years ago. And let me tell you, these are very, very bad individuals. So some of this money is clearly working against U.S. interests and not being deployed in a way that would make any sense if the American people knew about it. Which is, again, I think why a lot of the outrage is not just justified but entirely necessary. We can't have this happen going forward. You can't have.
Why am I funding through this group Hamas's murder of Israeli babies? I object. I'm funding the murder of the Beekeepers boys. F you, anybody who supports this organization at this point. This is such an outrage that this was allowed to happen in the first place. For anyone to have the gall to object to the questioning of it now, never mind the shutting down by Elon and Trump, they don't have their moral head on straight. This is outrageous. The entire country should be up in arms that we've been doing this. And instead, we get ridiculous headlines like I just read to you about why Elon is at a cabinet meeting. It's infuriating, Buck. You're right. What you said is right. They're more obsessed with being anti-Trump, anti-Elon than they are in figuring out what the true morality is of what's being exposed.
Yes, and they're showing also the American people how obtuse they are in their approach to this at every step of the way. These are not 50-50 issues. These are not even, 60-40 issues. This is much more like an 80-20, where 20% of the far left of this country, or the 20% that comprises it, is in favor of, say, Hamas, or they're in favor of trying to buy off terrorist groups with humanitarian aid. And the rest of the American people are saying, what the heck are you doing? This is completely insane. And I would just say, you've seen, I'm sure, Megyn, I think everyone's seen now, these chat logs from inside of the NSA and the CIA. And as
we haven't yet talked about that. Let me just set that up.
Oh, sure. Sorry. Go ahead. Yeah.
It's right. It broke the other day. Chris Rufo, who's an amazing force for good in the country, had a whistleblower come to him out of NSA saying, here are a bunch of texts from internal chat servers showing an obsession within our national security agencies with being trans, with sex, like gay sex, with calling themselves not just by the wrong pronouns, but insisting that these random people who work for us in the highest levels of our intelligence agencies want to be known as it. I'm an it. I'm not even a he or a she. Absolutely raunchy, disgusting talk. And the explanation is that they've gotten so obsessed with Pride Month and the so-called tolerance of the LGBTQ crowd that this went on without fear on these company internal chat forums until somebody just blew the whistle and Tulsi Gabbard actually said, everyone's getting fired who participated in that. I'll play that soundbite, SOT 1, and then you take it out.
Well, Jesse, what we're going to do has already been done. There are over 100 people from across the intelligence community that contributed to and participated in this, what is really just an egregious violation of trust, what to speak of basic rules and standards around professionalism. I put out a directive today that they all will be terminated and their security clearances will be revoked. They were brazen in using an NSA platform intended for professional use to conduct this kind of really horrific behavior. And they were brazen in doing this because when was the last time anyone was really held accountable? Today's action in holding these individuals accountable is just the beginning of what we're seeing across the Trump administration, which is carrying out the mandate the American people gave him. Clean house, root out that rot and corruption.
Go ahead, Buck.
Look, as you know, Megyn, I worked in the CIA for a number of years. It's been a while, but I still have a lot of friends on the inside and people throughout the intelligence community. And what you're hearing about in terms of how left-wing and insane it is, this is just the tip of the iceberg. This has been going on for years. This is a systemic problem.
This wasn't your internal chit-chat when you were there? You were not discussing how great it would be to have a an intersex baby so that you can raise him trans, like some of the messages here. An intersex birth would be a great opportunity to raise a kid as a non-binary and let them choose later. This is after they're discussing trans surgeries and their excitement about, quote, being penetrated. That wasn't the chit chat you saw on the internal servers back then.
No, we were trying to find Osama bin Laden. I mean, literally trying to find Osama bin Laden. Right. That was my job. I was in CTC in the CIA's Counterterrorism Center, and there was a sense. Now, remember, I was there in the early, starting around 2005. So there was a very clear mission set. You had us working very closely with military, including Tier 1 strike units, going after the worst of the worst. But starting around the Obama era, which is when I left, things started to shift, and they got very adept. And this is kind of a longer narrative, but these agencies, and this is why I was thinking about it when we were talking about USAID a moment ago, these agencies have really mirrored what you saw happen, Megyn, in the university system, where it's almost like an invasive species in nature gets a foothold and then takes over an entire ecosystem and blocks out all the other species. What you have is people inside of the federal bureaucracy who are radical left partisans, and this usually comes through HR, the DEI office, the left-wing commissars, if you will. They start to demand certain policies. They start to hire certain kinds of people. They create a pipeline for more of this madness. Just like how we saw the faculty lounges across America, even at the most elite universities, just have gone completely insane over the last 20 years. You could say it's maybe longer than that. This has happened throughout the intelligence community too. And when you don't have people showing up, you had this post 9/11 generation, which I was a part of, where we're just saying our country's under attack, let's fight Al-Qaeda. Okay, that's why a whole wave joined. If you joined the CIA in the last 10 years, a lot of people are joining, and they had to mouth the preferred slogans of the DEI commissars about things like the trans agenda. I have friends in the CIA who say that it feels like it's Trans Awareness Week every other week in the Central Intelligence Agency. And when you look at the issue of security clearances, which Tulsi Gabbard there brought up, these are not just people who are doing they're not working in the bowels of the Department of Agriculture. They're being entrusted with top secret and compartmented information, and they're clearly nuts. And this needs to be said. These people, when I applied to the CIA, it was, what do you have any gambling debts? What kind of credit card debt do you have? What kind of relationships do you have, with women, anyone overseas? I mean, they ask you all these very invasive questions. But apparently, if you want to have a hermaphrodite baby to run some kind of social experiment where you can raise them as the perfect trans kid and want everybody else to be on board for this, the NSA has a special spot for you. Right. What is being shown here is critical that people figure out what the heck has happened here. The Wesleyan Faculty Lounge is now running the CIA, the NSA, and these places, and it needs to stop. It has gone on far too long.
Just to give a little bit more from the Rufo reporting, Rufo had like an epic post on this, which summed it up as follows. There is a battalion of male to female transgenders within the American intel apparatus. They hate Italians and libs of TikTok. They fantasize about pseudo-vaginas and butthole lasers. They are in charge of the most sophisticated spying machine in human history. Well said. Here's a couple of examples. One, I mean, honestly, the rest is nice too, talking about transgender surgeries, wearing panties without worrying about anything showing, seeing my reflection in the mirror, wearing leggings, etc. But the pee thing is something I never thought of, but it's really nice. Then I'm going to be wearing leggings all day Friday and Saturday. I think about that last one probably the most. Blah, blah, blah. Mine is everything. I found that I like being penetrated. Never liked it before, GRS, but all the rest is just as important as well. And then all I can say is that this was 1,000,000% worth it. Despite having to fly to Thailand, pay out of pocket, and the recovery, I would not change anything if I had to do it all over again. And then the whistleblower says to Rufo, I know several people at the agency brought up, hey, we're here to fight for the USA and go after adversaries. And they just got hammered. They would start coming out with transphobe and homophobe right away or calling you a racist. The guy goes on, or gal, saying, I don't care if you're politically left or right. You can't have an unbiased mind if you're writing a report and you're constantly focused on how does this apply to gender ideology? Because when you do that, it's going to get people killed in the field. That's a good point.
Yes, well, this is why it's a very serious business that the intelligence community does, and it's sad to see what it has turned into in terms of the reputation. Remember, the FBI is part of the intelligence community. I think there's now 17 agencies that fall under the umbrella overall. I can't even name them all off the top of my head, and I used to be a part of it, and that's because they've added a few since I was in there. But they do have a very serious mission. It's bloated, it's ineffective, it's become incredibly DEI obsessed. All of that is very true. But you actually do need somebody to keep an eye on what the Russian SVR is doing. You actually do need somebody looking at the transcripts of whatever the latest, sat phone call is from Al-Shabaab to some terrorist group that is trying to blow, to their terrorist cell that's trying to blow up an embassy or something somewhere. So this is a critical mission that they have. And a huge part of this is the sense of esprit de corps that the workforce has, which I will tell you was there under the Bush years when I was in the CIA. There was a sense of, we know why we're showing up every day. It wasn't perfect. It was sometimes bureaucratic and slow, and there were challenges. But people were deploying to war zones. People were doing high-level missions and interesting stuff. That has just changed, and it changed, like I said, the same way so many of these government institutions. The moment that you have changed, the moment that you start to bend the knee to this madness, to the point about, who are these people and why are they demanding that you not focus on national security for the country and they're inside the intelligence community, the moment you start to bend the knee, they just demand more. And if you're somebody who tries to blow the whistle on them, by the way, before Trump came along and this administration, if you try to do that under the Biden years, you were the problem. Everyone always says it's impossible to get fired from the federal government. If you were on the wrong side of the DEI gods, oh man, bad things. And again, I know because I've talked to people who have had this happen to them. If you said something that offended somebody who is trans or whatever in the office, you'll be lucky if they don't send you to the HR re-education camp right away.
Trans people should not be serving in the intelligence community in this way. I'm sorry, there's too much of a mental question about their abilities for them to be this close to the nuclear controls and fighting our enemies. This is just, I don't think this is an appropriate place for them.
Yes, no, I completely agree with you. And the CIA in these places are notoriously hard, particularly the CIA is incredibly hard to get hired by, or at least it used to be. I don't know how it is these days. And there was a really rigorous process. And like I said, there was all of this incredibly intrusive. And, some of it I can't even get into because technically it's not something that I can speak about publicly. But they're allowed to know basically everything about your life, to look for any weakness in you that could be exploited by a foreign intelligence service. And we've got people, I mean, like the stuff that I'm not one to blush that easily, Megyn. I mean, the stuff you're reading about that Chris Rufo found, I had to look up some of this stuff. I didn't even know what some of these words are. I didn't know what a polycule was.
Crossed a Rubicon.
And to your point, this is supposed to be the most elite of the entire national security intelligence apparatus. You're talking about CIA and NSA. Those are really the flagship agencies. No offense to anybody from the other ones. But the fact that you have people wasting their time, and also just the brazenness, they're on a company server. I won't even say that Dolores from accounting looks nice in her dress on a company server. Do you know what I'm saying? Yes. We've had to live by such different rules. The people who show up and want to do the real mission are living in constant fear of, did I mansplain or something? And yet on the other side of things, you're allowed to be recruiting for your bizarre trans fantasies. It's crazy stuff. And so I'm glad Rufo found it. But again, this has been far more widespread. This is the thing about Doge, too. It's the thing about the Rufo leak of these chats. This is tip of the iceberg. We're just beginning to see this because they have taken over these federal institutions. Once you control HR and the hiring and internal enforcement mechanism, just look at the colleges. This has happened in big law firms now. This is why everyone's putting the pronouns, until now, in their signature. This is why everyone's been hiding from insane people. It's finally stopping, thank God. But I'm just trying to tell everybody, this is opening innings. It's not like, we've found it and now the problem can be fixed. There's a lot more of this stuff that you're going to see.
Well, here's a very insightful look at why Trump and Elon are actually taking a hard look at all these government agencies, from, yes, the NSA and the intel agencies to USAID, to try to figure out who's not doing what they're supposed to be doing and where can we find efficiencies. And in coordination with people like Tulsi, like Pete, like all the agency heads, to figure out what are the problems in personnel. Like, let's just start there by cleaning up the personnel. So here's an insightful take we got last night on CNN with another racist. This guy, he's a race baiter. He lost his show on MSNBC. He was too much for them years ago, named Touré, but now has been resurrected over on CNN, where they're taking their rejects from MSNBC. Good luck, Joy. Give it a try. Having an exchange with Scott Jennings as follows.
And at times
how is Trump shredding the Constitution?
My God, he's like,
seriously, do we have to give you a civics lesson that we have?
I don't know.
We put all power in the executive branch,
the
legislative branch, the FBI. Now we're in control of the military. We're silencing media. This is what you do in a dictatorship.
Are you suggesting that the president is not the commander-in-chief of the military?
I am suggesting that the president is going to put in charge somebody who is going to contravene the Constitution. And at some near point, this conversation will look very silly for you because it will be obvious. And right now, you're gaslighting. When we get to the actual rubber of the road of this, it will be clear.
I'm interested in this conversation. He's going to put someone in charge who will contravene the Constitution. Like, who? What do you mean by that? The president is in charge of the military, is he not? You said he's going to put someone in charge of the military?
The president is in charge of the military. That is how it works.
Meanwhile, this Touré looks very confused. What do you mean? Why are you saying he's in charge of the military? I would take my point, which is whatever he does with the military is unconstitutional.
Well, this goes right to why we are in the midst of, and Megyn, I'll be honest, I didn't know that we would ever get here, because it feels like it's been forever. I think I've been doing media now, left the CIA, I've been doing media for almost 15 years. And there just were these edifices of these institutions, monoliths of so-called journalism, whether it's CNN, the New York Times, the Washington Post, and it's all in free fall right now. And it should be, because they've lied so much. They've been so dishonest. Whether it was the covering up of Biden dementia, which we may get to, I know that's another thing that everyone's looking at right now. But they've lied on so many things. But the biggest thing that I think they have to deal with right now is, what is their purpose? The purpose of CNN, the purpose of the New York Times, the Washington Post, is not to tell people the objective truth. We know that. And anybody who still believes that is truly delusional. And there are very few people who believe it. Beyond that, they can't even say that their purpose is to serve the interests of the Democrat Party, because they humiliated their own audience. And as you know, I mean, this is among the cardinal sins of doing any kind of, whether it's journalism, commentary. If your audience turns on you because you've turned on them, it's all over, right? I mean, this is like 101, most basic stuff. They've ridiculed their own audience because everything that they told them that would come true did not come true. All of the fear mongering is now clearly just hysteria about Trump, and he's going to end the Constitution. It's the end of the country, and all these horrible things will happen, and we need to prosecute him, and he's a rapist, and he's this, and he's that. All lies, all lies. And I think that there's a core group of them. I used to watch, this is actually a guilty pleasure of mine, Megyn. I watched Morning Joe for about the 90 days leading up to Election Day, every day.
Same. Because I would listen to the podcast just to see what insanity was being spewed.
They were so crazy. I don't know how they even had the energy. Every morning it was Mika like, oh, the Nazis and Trump, and just and Joe, oh yeah, I know. I just got off the grass courts over at the country club, and let me tell you, I'm really worried. I mean, the whole thing was just vomit on toast, man. I mean, it was preposterous.
Yeah, and they fully played the Hitler card until he bent the knee at Mar-a-Lago, both of them, and kissed Hitler's ring. I said, oh, what do you mean? It's totally normal for us to do that.
This is a perfect example. This is what I mean, Megyn. If you're a Morning Joe, not kind of, I was a mockery watcher, but if you were really watching them, what do you have? What do they stand for? What are they doing for you now? If you were their true audience, and I think this is true of the New York Times, the Washington Post, and all these places now as well, they created an alternate reality for these people to live in, and that reality has come crashing down, which is why Joy Reid has to get fired. And I think The View is maybe going to have to make some shakeup soon, and why Jeff Bezos has told the Washington Post to stop being insane. You're not actually allowed to be communists anymore. This is the necessary reckoning that the traditional corporate legacy media is having right now. And you're even seeing parts of it on CNN. That Torre guy, I mean, that's an argument that was stupid 6 months ago. It's been annoying for 8 years, but no one believes this now. No one actually thinks. I mean, when I say nobody, the people who believe it will believe absolutely anything.
Well, yeah. I mean, at some point, even the MSNBC audience has got to get tired about being wrong about everything. It's just embarrassing if you just keep taking Rachel Maddow's information, repeating it in the public, and then have, your pants effectively pulled down on you. You've made a clown out of yourself. Let's spend a minute on the Washington Post. So Jeff Bezos, I find this interesting. Of course, the Washington Post is hard left now and has been for some time, since the first Trump presidency at least. And he's owned it for almost all of that time. And now he shows up at the inauguration. He, like the other tech titans, made a big donation to the Trump Inauguration Fund. He's got his half-dressed fiance there, 2 steps from the president as he takes the oath of office, because now he wants to be near power. He wants to curry favor with the sitting president. So he both gave money and paraded a naked woman in front of President Trump. And now the third move is he's changing the editorial policy on the Washington Post opinion page. He writes this long message on X, which reads in part as follows. We are going to be writing every day in support of and in defense of 2 pillars: personal liberties, my interpretation of that is the Bill of Rights, and free markets, meaning capitalism and not government control of everything in our economy. We will cover other topics too, of course, but viewpoints opposing those pillars will be left to be published by others. There was a time when a newspaper, especially one that was a local monopoly, might have seen it as a service to bring to the reader's doorstep every morning a broad-based opinion section that sought to cover all views. Today, the internet does that job. I am of America and for America, and proud to be so. Wow, really? Our country did not get here by being typical. And a big part of America's success has been freedom in the economic realm and everywhere else. Freedom is ethical. It minimizes coercion, and practical. It drives creativity, invention, and prosperity. I mean, great. There's not a word of that you or I would disagree with. But where the hell was this Jeff Bezos for the past 10 years? His paper has been taken over by a bunch of communists, lunatics. And let me just give you one other piece. They still employ Karen Attiah, who is a Washington Post columnist, who the day after 10/7 and the attack on Israel liked a post that said, this is what decolonization looks like. What did y'all think we meant by decolonization? Too bad about the dead babies burned in their cribs. Sorry, that's what we meant. And if you didn't get it, you're too stupid to know that. And Karen Attiah, not for nothing, but she showed up at a book event just the other day in, I don't know where the town was. I think it was in Washington. Yeah, it was in Washington, D.C. And this woman got in her grill about that tweet and the like. And all of Karen Attiah's posts have been very pro-Hamas. And this is how Karen Attiah this is Jeff Bezos' employee, defends herself and what we just witnessed with this woman who got in her grill. Let's play Sod 8.
Make no apologies for standing on the side of Palestinian liberation at all. That's all I'll say about that. And I hope this is actually an example of the backlash of how violent the social media discourse is, how violent it is, the response is to anyone who speaks about Israel-Palestine, and frankly, I'd say particularly Black.
Especially if you're Black. So that's his simple. I'm failing to sense the true leaf turning, Buck. I know he wants to fig leaf it. Yay, now I'm pro individual liberties, and yay, now I'm pro free markets. How on earth do you have a paper like that up until about 2 minutes ago employed Jennifer Rubin? She quit of her own volition, but he's gladly platformed that insane lunatic for years.
Well, this is where we have to start to look at who is truly at a moment of recognition that they had been wrong or they had been backing the wrong team. You know, who's been red pilled versus who is going with where the winds are right now. I mean, I don't believe for one second, as somebody who was absolutely hounded by the New York Times did a hit piece on me during COVID. Everything I said during COVID turned out to be true, by the way. You know, masks are a joke, lockdowns are idiotic. It didn't matter, right? Facebook shut me down. I've had multiple YouTube shows banned. Anyway, you know, poor me. I'm just saying the point is these tech barons, when it mattered, were not just MIA. They were worse than that, actually. They were leading the charge to shut us down. I think there's no question. You look at somebody like Elon, he has been truly red-pilled, and his story, I mean, I think it's quite clear to everybody. I have a tremendous amount of respect for the guy. His story about what happened to his son, where they transed his son, and he shared this publicly. I believe Elon is truly and dearly on our team now. You know, on team sanity, on team, you know, freedom and Western civilization. There is a contingent of the Democrat Party, and that's, you mentioned this or showed us also this person from the Washington Post. There's a contingent of the Democrat Party that honestly is deeply ideologically and emotionally tied to barbarousness and evil. And this is something that I saw after 9/11 when I was in college, and there were Democrats. There was we had a whole school meeting, Megyn. I know I'm taking a little bit of a step back here. We had an all-school meeting on 9/11. People were finding out that they had relatives who were killed that day in my school. And one of the main professors for our foreign relations political science department said, this is what happens when you make people mad at you through your arrogant policy. And that was a really oh my moment, right? I mean, that was a holy, I cannot believe how sort of fetid and decrepit the ideology of the left, that, you know, this guy was a self-described Marxist, by the way, so it wasn't really a surprise. October 7th, and this is where I'm bringing it up, was another moment of you're either with the good guys or the bad guys on this. And I know people like to pretend that they care so much about Palestine. The Americans who care so much about Palestine, they know nothing. There is no Palestine. Put that aside. They're ignoramuses on the issue. They view it as a racial conflict because they're so dumb that they don't understand that Israel is actually a multi-ethnic society. The 20% of Israel is of Arab and often Muslim background. They don't know anything. All they know is Israel, it must be a bunch of guys who look like Jerry Seinfeld. It's all a bunch of like rich white guys in Israel, and they're hurting the brown people who are the Palestinians. And that will get you a column at the Washington Post. This is the point. That kind of mentality until now was absolutely supported and platformed at a lot of these legacy institutions. So the fact that that's turning around now a bit is a good thing. But to your point about Jeff Bezos, I'm not, you know, he's not Elon, you know, I mean, I'm not convinced.
I don't believe him for 1 second. I believe his critics who say this is about saving and currying advantage for his other businesses like Amazon, which is potentially facing an antitrust problem, maybe Blue Origin. This is ridiculous. And by the way, just one other point, and I'll give it back to you.
Sure.
Karen Attiya then throwing in the race card at the end, like they really come down on you if you support Hamas. It's really outrageous. Yes, it is. It's amazing how we don't like people who support terror against innocents, but especially if you're black. Okay, she can't get over it. She's got to play the race card in her little DC book event. Like, I'm really getting it because of my black skin, not because of my support for these baby killers. It's because I'm black. Poor me. Until he roots out people like that, I don't believe him for 1 second that he's committed to anything different than what he's been doing. I believe the people who say he's worried about his other businesses. Go ahead, Buck.
Yeah, no, it's fine. Well, I mean, just anti-white solidarity has been a weapon used by the left, by the Democrat progressives, with reckless abandon for years, and effectively, unfortunately. I mean, this is just they always can retreat into this. Oh, you're taking the side again with the Palestinians. You're taking the side of Israel because they're white. It's like that this is so ahistorical and absurd, but it doesn't matter because people get scared. It's like calling people a racist in the 90s, right? You call someone a racist in the 90s, oh, I'm so sorry, and, into the 2000s, and then they elevated it and it became white supremacist, right? That was the next. I mean, you remember when a white supremacist was like a lunatic with a shaved head and swastikas like tattooed all over him, whatever?
Yes.
Then all of a sudden, the New York Times in the Obama years starts saying that white supremacy is not being an active anti-racist. You're like, hold on a second. This is a complete transformation. Just one word about Jeff Bezos, Megyn, and I'm putting this out there. I'm not totally convinced of this, but I will say, I think that, and I have observed this as a guy, as an American male, I think that, the guy's obviously gone on a regimen. He's got probably a peptide stack, maybe taken more than just peptides, if you know what I mean.
Oh, yeah, he
he's
looks
taken some
dramatically
stuff.
different.
Yes. I think if you start taking roids and working out, you get more right wing as a guy.
Interesting.
So maybe there's some chance. Because I do think that, I honestly believe, I think that for men, generally, this is a very broad statement, but like medically low testosterone levels correlates with far left thinking and Democrat solidarity.
Okay, but he's had the physical transformation now for a number of years. So where did it manifest? I mean, other than
he was growing as he was growing that
the
muscle.
rocket.
I think he's been getting more right wing. Maybe that's the only thing I could say for him.
Look, it would be great to have him on Team Sanity because he is a powerful man. He's a very important American, and he does own the Washington Post. I will believe it when I see it. And so far, I don't believe it. I just, whatever. All right,
he hasn't
speaking
proven
of
it
press,
yet. I agree with you. It hasn't proven it yet.
Grand Canyon University, a private Christian university in beautiful Phoenix, Arizona, believes that we are endowed by our Creator with certain unalienable rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. GCU believes in equal opportunity and that the American dream starts with purpose. By honoring your career calling, you can impact your family, friends, and your community. Change the world for good by putting others before yourself. Whether your pursuit involves a bachelor's, master's, or doctoral degree, GCU's online, on-campus, and hybrid learning environments are designed to help you achieve your unique academic, personal, and professional goals. With over 340 academic programs as of September 2024, GCU meets you where you are and provides a path to help you fulfill your dreams. The pursuit to serve others is yours. Let it flourish. Find your purpose at Grand Canyon University. Private, Christian, affordable. Visit gcu.edu. One thing conservatives believe in is self-reliance, taking responsibility for your own health, your family, and your future. Well, I want to tell you about Beam's Dream Powder. Beam is proudly founded in America and run by people who care about hard work, integrity, and delivering results. It's a science-backed, healthy, nighttime blend packed with ingredients shown to improve sleep so you can wake up refreshed and ready to take on the day. Dream is made with a powerful blend of all natural ingredients, reishi, magnesium, melatonin, and more. Beam reports that they have improved over 17.5 million nights of sleep, helping people across the country wake up and feel their best. Here's the deal. Beam is giving you the ultimate Patriot discount of 40% off. Try their best-selling Dream Powder and get up to 40% off for a limited time. Go to shopbeam.com/Megyn and use the code MK at checkout. That's shop, BEAM.com/Megyn and use that code MK for up to 40% off your order. Support an American company, invest in yourself, and start getting your best sleep tonight. Speaking of press meltdowns, the White House announced this week that they are going to decide who's in the White House press pool, not the press. Now, the press pool, for those listening at home, is a group of representatives from television, radio, yes, now streaming, and print reporters, usually a wire service like AP or Reuters. And it's a small group of representatives from each one of those realms of media that gets to follow the president around at all times in the more, not in like the residence of the White House, but like in the more intimate spaces like the Oval or on the trips. Something, you're not going to take everybody who's in that press briefing room with you when you're the president of the United States. But pool, if you're part of pool, you get to go, and it is your responsibility to report everything he does back to all the other media and the public. And the pool reporting job is very important. It's, the pool is the reason we saw Ronald Reagan get shot. They were covering Ronald Reagan. I mean, he wasn't doing anything extraordinary that day, but pool was there because they always have eyes on the president. Pool was there covering Even, President Trump, when he got shot before he actually got reelected in Butler, Pennsylvania, pool has to be there. And as a former reporter at Fox News, and I did White House duty when I was in my very young years there, here and there, pool is like a serious responsibility. You can't fuck up pool. Like you really do have to get it right. And typically the media will decide who can do pool because it's very expensive and everybody understands it's important that you get somebody in there who's really going to tell you what happened. So I will say, for the record, I don't know how I feel about the White House saying we're not now going to decide who's in pool. It's not the same as saying we're going to bring in new voices to the press briefing room. I love all that. But I actually happen to believe the media should decide who's in pool. Because it's a matter of resources. It's just the TV lane alone. And they seem to be saying TV will not change. TV will decide who's doing TV. But the number of wires you've got to get in there to get the cameras ready, getting an experienced photog in there to make sure he gets moments like, God forbid, there's a presidential assassination attempt. You can't fuck around with that. You need true pros who have got a lot of experience, setting up a shot, being ready for breaking news. I speak only from the TV realm because that's the one I know. I got questions about this before I really endorse it or criticize it, but the media's in a full-on meltdown over it. And what they're upset about is that the vaunted media, are starting to lose more and more control about how Trump gets covered and in what way he gets covered. And the more I've been looking at the people objecting, the more I've been recoiling, because the absurdity of some of these people trying to say, we are the vaunted media who cannot, be told what to do. The head of the White House Correspondents Association is a guy named Eugene Daniels. He worked for Politico up until yesterday. Politico. Now he's leaving to go to MSNBC. Okay, this guy, we just pulled his social media. He is all over his social media in dresses, trying to look like Beyonce. This is a former college football player. Look at this guy. This is the one who's now our press representative at the White House. Look at this. For the listening audience, he's wearing a Beyonce blonde wig with his very large body, sticking his ass out, trying to look sexy, half man, half woman. Okay. And it's also the same guy who accused Brian Kilmeade of racism when he was talking about Kamala Harris going back to her college sorority. And this guy Brian said colored sorority, and ran with that breathlessly to the press, trying to embarrass Brian Kilmeade. Meanwhile, so what an absurd thing for Brian Kilmeade to be accused of. He's been on the air for how many years? He doesn't talk like that. We all know that. And even this guy was forced to dial it back. But what do you make of what's happening now as the press and press pool tries to pretend they cannot be messed with? They're above it all. All we need to do is respect and honor them.
So I have two main feelings about this. One, and I'll sort of start with your stated concern, which I think you prefaced properly as we don't know yet. But the stated concern is, well, maybe this won't be able, it's an important job. And if the media doesn't decide, it won't be handled as well. What I would say to that is this team that Trump has brought in is the pro team. I know them pretty much all personally talking with the different cabinet members, not all of them, but, I'd say 75%, 80% of them. I know you do too. These are very capable, competent people that are making these decisions. Stephen Miller, Deputy White House Chief of Staff, is an absolutely brilliant guy. I mean, you look at Caroline Leavitt. I know she's young. She is a superstar. And I know that too, because before she was on the Trump campaign, we tried to hire her for something over at iHeart. So, these are very talented people. And I think, Megyn, they should be given the room to cook, They should be given the ability to handle it their way. If there are problems with the pool, you and I know we'll hear about it. So I think they can figure this out, is kind of what I'm getting to.
Let me ask you this, Buck. Well, the other thing about this that makes me somewhat uncomfortable, and I'm all for pushing back on left-wing bias. I don't have to prove that to anybody, but I do think the independence of the press is important. I realize the press has lost its mind, but it's written right into the Bill of Rights that free press is one of our most fundamental values. And I'm not sure I'm comfortable with the White House saying, this is who will cover me. This is who I will allow to cover me at all. It's one thing to say to the AP, F you've lost your right to be in these intimate spaces. But there is a difference in saying, we will decide, not you members of the press, who gets to come into every space and ask questions of the president. I mean, we could be in a Democrat administration next where they're like, nobody other than MSNBC and, the AP can have access and ask questions.
I think your example there is though what we've dealt with all Democrat administrations, which is that you effectively have the regime picking regime media to cover the regime. And
yes, but Fox is always in there. Fox is always in there. And listen, this White House is not, they haven't thrown out all left-wing media. It's almost still the pool that they want, dominant left-wing media. I'm just saying the principle of it, if we're going to discuss the principle of it, we're on dangerous ground here.
Look, I absolutely admit that there are complexities here. And I also do want there to be, I think that there should be, no matter how much somebody loves what this administration is doing, and I'm very frank about this, I thought the beginning of the Trump first term, and I think Trump has admitted this, I've talked to him about it, it was messy. They were screwing things up. They didn't have the right people in place, and I bring it up. I don't think that's the case this time around, and it's even gone beyond my expectations, but put that aside for a second. I think that no matter what, you want there to be a degree of at least objectivity in the facts and in the sense of getting facts about what's going on day to day about an administration, because you want them to have, you want people to have some ability to judge what's really going on. Now, that all said, I also think, Megyn, that that this role of the press pool, and you said you had done this, so just
I never did pool, but I did White House reporting.
Right. So, I mean, you've been covering the White House. I've never done that role, right? So I don't want to go beyond what I know, but I do think it's quite clear that President Trump is sharing thoughts directly with the people via Twitter or Truth on a daily basis. I think the access that we all have to information, it's not like if there isn't some some press stenographer who's standing there writing it down, we're not necessarily going to know what's happening. I
agree with that, but that's different. President Trump is more accessible to the press than any president I've ever seen. I mean, every day he sits down and gives an hour-long
So help me understand
Q&A
what's
session.
the worry.
But
what's the worry?
Because let's I'm thinking, like, pick some random blogger in your head. I don't want to insult anybody by naming a name, but just pick some random successful online Substack reporter or podcast host. Who's pool that day and is supposed to be reporting on the president's agenda or his whereabouts. And let's say some major breaking news happens, and that person happens to have a more partisan agenda, which is fine in our daily media, but a somewhat risky for pool. Like, I certainly wouldn't want to receive a report that is openly partisan. It's bad enough when I have to receive one that's subtly partisan from the AP. And so I, as a reporter who wants straight facts, would be like, okay, I don't really want a political pundit, somebody who's in the business of spinning, in there running pool for me. I really don't. And I realize we're talking fine lines here because the AP is in the business of spinning.
Yeah,
so that's why we need a variety. But I'm saying that there are responsibilities when you're like the sole pool reporter. Like at times there's one pool reporter who we depend on to tell us what happened to the president. Like, what happened? Who shot him? Who did? And I do think there needs to be a basic minimum standard of having had experience covering the president, having covered the White House, coming from an institution that can cover the costs. By the way, you can't be in pool unless you can cover your own costs, which can be over $100,000 a year.
Again, I think the problem, Megyn, I mean, everything that you're saying, I hear you and it makes sense and it's very rational, but it's like we're assessing a problem that hasn't occurred yet, meaning that they may pick people who are highly competent and do an excellent job. And so that's what I meant by they've brought in the A-team so far. So
But why should they get to choose? Why should they get to choose as opposed to the press?
Because I think the press has shown itself to be, I think the whole notion of an objective journalism or objective media is a farce and has always been.
I agree, but it's not for the president to decide who gets to cover him. We will cover him because we are the press.
But who's we? But who gets to decide? See, this is the problem, Megyn. There's a cartel that has existed. The White House Correspondents Association, this I do know a little bit about, having gone to one of their balls, by the way, and thought it was the most boring and self-important and annoying thing ever and never went back. But knowing some of the people involved in that, why should they get to choose? And that's been the case for a long time. So I don't understand.
It's the White House Press Association. It's the Correspondents Association. Why? Like, it's one thing. Everybody, look, and I had no problem with him throwing out the AP, but it's different when the president is saying, I get to choose who's going to cover me. I'll choose the whole list. Once you say you can do that, then he can say only Fox and Newsmax. He could. If we're saying that's an okay thing to do, he could say that. And then the next president could say only MSNBC and NBC or AP. I think when it gets to who goes into that pool and who is responsible for the full-time coverage of the press or the president whenever and whenever he's in the public, it should be up to the press who's on that duty.
But who's the press, Megyn? We keep coming back to this.
Well, in this situation, it's the White House Correspondents Association.
Right, I know. And who determines who's in that? And why has that been the case?
Well, I mean, are you, like Fox News is in it. Jackie Henrick has been out there all week saying this is not a good idea. This is not, you don't understand what goes into pool. I mean, do you know what goes into pool?
I'm not saying
most people have no idea.
I'm not saying there aren't good people who are part of it. And by the way, Fox's presence there, which and a lot of times, as you know, they have been the only voice and they don't get called on that much. And so there's the table is not set, right, or level rather, right? Like there's been some skewing that's gone on even. But look, Trump, the notion that Trump is going to shy away from, he loves, how many times did he sit down with Maggie Haberman?
Then why are they controlling pool?
Because I think they're going to have a good mix of different people in there. I think that there's an assumption that's being made that it's only going to be people that the left-wing Democrat media is going to freak out about. You know, it's not just, I don't want to say anybody, throw them under the bus, but it's not just going to be like Daily Caller and Breitbart in there. There'll be other people involved in the coverage. And I think Trump wants
to add to it. Then that's fine. Then you add 2 more seats in pool. Maybe you have 7 representatives normally. Now you have 9. But I just think there's a lot that goes into following the president of the United States around all day, every day on foreign trips and so on. And I really think there's something to both having people do it from institutions that completely have it down. You don't know how many meetings go down. I've been in them at Fox on the number of things you have to have in line to make sure you miss nothing. The tech support you have to do to make sure that you have the cameras in place and so on. That's one. And I also think, look, as much as we like President Trump, there is a line between the press and the president, and he does not control the media.
I traveled with Pompeo once in his press pool, and it was a bunch of left-wing cat ladies who hated his guts. So, I mean, I just think that this is, that's just the truth. So I don't know that this is necessarily the vaunted institution that we need to keep going. Now, that was Secretary of State,
that's where I
not
started.
the president. But
that's why I talk about this guy, Eugene Daniels. This is what we're dealing with. But realistically, if you saw the way they organize this thing, it takes a lot. And you cannot take an organization that doesn't have a lot of resources or experience and make them the ones we're dependent on.
We got to come back to this thing, because I think in time you're going to
president.
say that they surprised you with how well they handled this. But if I'm wrong, I will come on here and give you a mea culpa.
Yeah. Well, listen, I think my audience knows I'm not a knee-jerk defender of the press. But I'm not a knee-jerk defender of the president either. And there is an important role for an independent press in this country. That's why it's in the First Amendment. And there are limits to the controls that can be placed on them. And so while I think it's a great idea to expand access and make sure we get new voices in there, I don't think the president is in a position to tell us who gets to cover him, the entirety of the list, which is the difference between saying, AP, you're out, and saying, we determine all of who is in. To me, there's a difference there. All right. Anyway, we used our time on the media, but it was an interesting discussion. And Buck, it's always interesting talking to you. Thank you for coming on.
So fun to hang out, Megyn. Thank you so much.
All right. We'll talk soon. And thanks to all of you. Would love your thoughts on the president's moves at the White House and when it comes to the press. Send me an email, Megyn@MegynKelly.com. We are back tomorrow with Emily Jashinsky and the ladies of Red Scare. See you then. So many people these days are super focused on their health, right? On eating healthier and living healthier. And in that vein, let me tell you about Jacob and Kristen, the founders of We Heart Nutrition. They are raising 5 kids while running a company that is helping hardworking Americans to live that American dream. We Heart Nutrition makes high-quality, research-backed supplements for women and men at every stage of life, helping you stay strong, energized, and hitting your wellness goals. But this is not just another supplement company. They are proudly pro-life, donating 10% of every sale to pregnancy care centers, supporting moms and babies in need. They have over 1,000 5-star reviews from real people who are seeing real results. Go to weheartnutrition.com and take their quick 20-second quiz to get your personalized supplement subscription recommendation delivered right to your door each month. And right now, they are giving you 20% off your first order with my code Megyn. Invest in your health. Go to weheartnutrition.com and use the code Megyn for 20% off. That's weheartnutrition.com, code MEGYN.